Today I am going to talk about the crowding out phenomenon in economics. In economics, crowding out is a phenomenon that occurs when the government adopts an expansionary fiscal policy. That is, the government increases its budget deficit, government increases government spending, decreases its tax rate, or even the government spend more than that what it earns. It substantially affects the remainder of the market, either on the supply or the demand side. Government borrowing can reduce the financial capital available for private firms to invest in physical capital. However, government spending can also encourage certain elements of long-term growth, such as spending on roads or water system, on education, or on research and development that creates new technology, etc. A larger budget deficit will increase demand for financial capital. The supply of funds in the financial market is the sum of private saving, government saving, and net investment by foreigners into domestic financial market. If the private saving and the net foreign investment remain the same, then less financial capital will be available for the private investment in physical capital. When the government borrowing soaks up available financial capital, leaves less for private investment in physical capital, that results in crowding out problem. Let us discuss about the relationship between interest rate and the increase in government spending. In the financial market, an increase in government borrowing can shift the demand curve for the financial capital or the loanable funds to the right from the earlier demand curve D0 to D1. As the equilibrium interest rate shift from E0 to E1, that shows that there is an increase in interest rate from 5% to 6% as depicted in this picture. The higher interest rate is one economic mechanism by which government borrowing can crowd out the private investment. The higher interest rate tends to reduce the private investment in physical capital. The new factory that made sense when the company could borrow the necessary funding at 5% no longer makes sense at an interest rate of 6%. The same phenomenon can be also explained with the help of LM curve. What happens if that an increase in demand for loanable funds by the government, that is due to a deficit financing, that will shift the loanable fund demand curve rightwards and upward, increasing the real interest rate. A higher real interest rate increases the opportunity cost of borrowing money, decreasing the amount of interest sensitive expenditure such as investment and consumption. Thus, the government has crowded out the private investment. The IS curve moves to the right, causing a higher interest rate. The expansion in the real economy, real GDP or income, whatever, the highest interest rate leads to a lowest investment because of the inverse relationship between interest and investment. The extent to which crowding out occurs depends on the economic situation. If the economy is at the full capacity or full employment level, then the government suddenly increasing its budget deficit, example via stimulus through different public programs, could create competition within the private sector for scarce fund available for investment, resulting in an increasing interest rate and reduce the private investment or consumption. Thus, the effect of the stimulus is offset by the effect of crowding out. On the other hand, if the economy is below capacity and there is a surplus of fund available for investment, an increase in the government deficit does not result in competition within the private sector. In this scenario, the stimulus program would be much more effective. In sum, changing the government's budget deficit has a stronger impact on GDP when the economy is below capacity. Therefore, the crowding out phenomenon happens mainly in the economy with the full employment level. What factors that determines how much crowding out take place? The extent to which interest rate adjustment dampen the output expansion induced by the increased government spending is determined by income increases more than the interest rate increases. If the the liquidity preference money supply curve is flat, then the income increases less than the interest rate increase if the IS or investment saving curve is flat. Then the next case is the income and interest rate increases more than the the larger the multiplier, thus the larger the horizontal shift in the IS curve. In each case, the extent of crowding out is greater the more interest rate increases when government spending rises. If the economy is in a hypothesized liquidity trap, that the LM curve is horizontal, an increase in government spending has its fuller multiplier effect on the equilibrium income. There is no change in the interest associated with the change in the government spending. Thus, no investment spending cut off. Therefore, there is no dampening of the effect of increased government spending on income. So, if the LM curve is horizontal, monetary policy has no impact on equilibrium of the economy, and the fiscal policy has the maximal effect. If the LM curve is vertical, then the increase in government spending has no effect on the equilibrium income and only it increases the interest rate. If the demand for money is not related to the interest rate as the vertical LM curve implies, then there is a unique level of income at which the money market is in equilibrium. Thus, with the vertical LM curve, an increase in government spending cannot change the equilibrium income and only raises the equilibrium interest rate. But if the government spending is higher and the output is unchanged, there must be an offsetting reduction in the private spending. This is the case that the increase in the interest rate crowds out an amount of private spending equal to increase in government spending. Thus, there is a full crowding out if the LM curve is vertical. If the increased borrowing of the government leads to higher interest rate by creating a greater demand for money and loanable funds and hence a higher price, the private sector, which is sensitive to interest rate, will likely to reduce investment due to a lower rate of return. This is the investment that is crowd out. If crowding out causes a reduction in private investment, it also leads to a long-term reduction in the economic growth over the long term. This is the another reason why neoclassical economists favor business tax cut over government spending increases, since business tax cuts tend to stimulate private investment. Let us sum of the overall crowding out effect. The crowding out effect explains a phenomenon when the government adopts an expansionary policy through deficit financing. When there is an increase in government spending, that is delta G increases, gradually there is an increase in the overall income level. Income also increases. Because of the increased income, there is a demand effect. Money demand also increases. There is a transactionary demand for money also increases. That will further leads to increase in the rate of interest. Because of the inverse relationship between rate of interest and investment, gradually the investment curtailed or the investment gradually declines. This is the crowding out phenomenon. That is how the public expenditure increase in the public expenditure gradually leads to a reduction in the private investment. Then there is some contradictory or conflicting argument against this crowding out phenomenon, that is known as crowding in. That means instead of reducing investment, it can also leads to increase in investment. That is the phenomenon known as crowding in. This is explained with the help of the functional relationship. That is, investment is not only a function of rate of interest, but it is also a function of income. Whenever there is an increase in the government spending, it will leads to increase in interest, and at the same time there is an increase in income also. And the effect of this income is even much higher than the change in the rate of interest, and the reverse process will taken place. That that is the causes for crowding in process. That is, when there is an increase in the government spending, that will leads to increase in income, demand increases, rate of interest also increases, but the increase in income, the multiplier effect is much higher than the change in interest rate, that will leads to a long term growth in the investment, that may even leads to improvement in investment. Therefore, that is just opposite of the crowding out phenomenon. Thank you.